Hello and welcome back to video lecture number 5. My name is Mr. Baver, and today I will discuss some thoughts for wrapping up the New Deal, where they are taken from David Kennedy's Freedom from Fear, the American People in Depression and War. So the essential question we're going to be looking at today is, what did the New Deal do? And we're going to take some ideas from the chapter Freedom and Fear. So to begin, I would like to recount a quote taken from David Kennedy's book. Please do not write this down, just listen, and after I will have a question about the quote. So Kennedy writes, "The New Deal can be seen to have left in place a set of institutional arrangements that constituted a more coherent pattern that is dreamt of in many philosophies. That pattern can be summarized in a single word: security. Security for vulnerable individuals, to be sure, as Roosevelt famously urged in his campaign for the Social Security Act of 1935, but security for capitalists and consumers, for workers and employers, for corporations and farms, and homeowners and bankers and builders as well. Job security, life cycle security, financial security, market security, however it might be defined, achieving security,
Pardon the interruption. Campus is temporarily.
However it might be defined, achieving security was the leitmotif of virtually everything the New Deal attempted. Unarguably, Roosevelt sought to enlarge the national state as the principal instrument of the security and the stability that he hoped to impart to American life." So, after listening to this quote, I want you to just take a second and write down what you think that means in your own words. Please pause the video at this time and write it down, and we will begin very shortly. Alright, so now that you've written down some ideas, this wonderful passage captures the essence of the New Deal according to the historian David Kennedy, who has studied this time period at great length. And I concur with his thoughts that the New Deal aimed at creating security. What is interesting to note is that Roosevelt's programs have something for everyone, from all walks and stations in life. It was a truly universal set of programs and responses to a devastating economic collapse that affected everyone. So although President Roosevelt stated that his chief goal was fixing the broken economy by restoring employment and creating greater demand, i.e. spending, his actions speak to another goal that was not stated in speeches. Kennedy writes that the New Deal's premier objective, at least until 1938, and in Roosevelt's mind probably for a long time thereafter, was not economic recovery but structural reform. In the last analysis, reform was the New Deal's lasting legacy. Kennedy goes on writing that the New Deal, despite what angry and vocal critics suggested, was not a plan to destroy capitalism, but rather to make it more stable and more predictable, while also distributing the benefits of the economy more evenly, though the New Deal did not make much of a dent in the inequality of wealth that existed in the 1920s. So next, we're going to look at three main ideas that we can focus on when thinking about the President, FDR, and the New Deal. So first off, the era of continuous economic growth ended with the onset of the Depression in 1930 to 1931. To Roosevelt and his advisors, Rexford Tugwell, chief among them, the Great Depression was not just another series of economic downturns. It was rather a death of an era that had produced the most spectacular economic gains and unimaginable prosperity in the United States. The system that produced such wealth had not only ground to a halt, but it had died, and the question was what to do about it. FDR came into the presidency in March 1933 without a precise plan of action, but he possessed a clear conviction that he and the federal government had a responsibility to alleviate the suffering of the American people, in addition to creating programs to restore hope in the nation. I think it's really important to understand that FDR came into this position and believed that he and the federal government should actually fix these problems because nothing like this had happened before. Second part is that the private sector, the non-government, would not be able to generate or create sufficient investment and employment to keep the economy growing. This explains the creation of the Works Progress Administration in 1935, led by a close Roosevelt confidant, Harry Hopkins. Both Roosevelt and Hopkins believed that a government employment program, where government creates jobs for citizens, would be necessary on a permanent basis. And finally, the idea that the United States was economically self-sufficient and did not rely on trade with other nations for economic growth was the third idea that explains the New Deal. President FDR stated in his first inaugural address that our international trade relations are a point of time and necessity secondary only to the establishment of a sound national economy. The New Deal programs and the measures were aimed at restoring the American economy with little regard for how they impacted foreign trade and foreign nations. It made sense at that time, however, knowing what we know today. FDR's intense economic nationalism had catastrophic consequences because they made the economic downturn worse in many other parts of the world, foremost in Europe, and in particular Germany. The connection between the severe economic depression made worse by America's inward focus and the rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany is strong and beyond doubt at this point, though FDR and his advisors in Congress could not have known this. So before we go on, I want to do a spot check, and I want you to summarize Roosevelt's stated and unstated goals of the New Deal in your own words. We talked about this a few slides ago. If you're not sure, please go back and listen to it, but summarize the stated and unstated goals of the New Deal in your own words, please, in the next couple seconds. Alright, so next we are going to look at another quote from David Kennedy about the programs of the New Deal. So the New Deal erected an institutional scaffolding designed to provide unprecedented stability and predictability for the American economy. In time, that edifice, or government programs, would serve as the lattice work on which the post-war economy grew like kudzu, the mile-a-minute vine that carpets much of the South. Kennedy's passage here captures the idea that the reforms of the New Deal aimed at giving unemployed, hungry, and penniless Americans hope in a better tomorrow, thanks to the efforts and actions of a caring and involved federal government. The New Deal's overarching goal was to create stability and predictability. That is, the government's programs and policies would help regulate America's free market capitalist economy to ensure a more reliable and predictable outcomes. This is the scaffolding that FDR and Congress erected during the New Deal, And Kennedy's point is that it allowed the American economy to take off once production for World War II began. So the big idea is that not only did FDR create these goals to try and help the people today, this set up the structure that allowed the economy to take off during World War II. So if you can get anything from this, the New Deal program set, while they didn't maybe achieve great success during the 1930s, once World War II came around, a lot of the structure that was put in place by the New Deal, a lot of the structure put in place by the New Deal programs during the Great Depression allowed then the economy to take off during World War II. So to end, I want to play a YouTube clip from FDR's second inaugural address, and I'd like you to listen to it, please, and we might have a couple questions I ask you in class about the YouTube clip when you get back. So please make sure you listen to the YouTube clip before class.
Prosperity already tests the persistence of our progressive purpose. So let us ask again, have we reached the goal of our vision of that 4th day of March 1933? Have we found our happy valley? I see a great nation upon a great continent, blessed with a great wealth of national resources. Its 130 million people are at peace among themselves. They are making their country a good neighbor among the nations. I see a United States which can demonstrate that under democratic methods of government, national wealth can be translated into a spreading volume of human comfort hitherto unknown, and the lowest standard of living can be raised far above the level of mere subsistence. I see millions of families trying to live on income so meager that the pall of family disaster hangs over them day by day. I see millions whose daily lives in city and on farm continue under conditions labeled indecent by a so-called polite society half a century ago. I see millions denied education, recreation, and the opportunity to better the lot of themselves and their children. I see millions lacking the means to buy the products of farm and factory, and by their poverty denying work and productiveness to many other millions. I see 1/3 of a nation still housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. But it is not in despair that I paint that picture for you. I paint it for you in hope, because the nation, seeing and understanding the injustice of it, proposes to paint it out.
Alright, make sure you please write down any questions you have, and we will try and answer them in class. And thank you. Here ends this video lecture.